Hi, my name is Kirk DeZayman, and I'm on the Board of Directors of the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. As you're probably aware, the federal election is scheduled for October 21st. And we're here today conducting interviews with the federal election candidates, and we're doing this prior to our all candidates debate on September 25th, 6 p.m. at the Chilliwack Cultural Center. As BC's largest member-driven organization, the BC Chamber Network represents over 36,000 businesses, and we play a crucial role in bringing issues of importance to governments and potential governments during this democratic process. We sat down with the candidates for the Chilliwack Hope riding and asked them 5 questions. So stay tuned to our social media over the next week to hear what they had to say.
Sure. My name is Mark Strahl. I was born and raised here in Chilliwack. I've been the Member of Parliament since 2011, was re-elected in 2015. This will be my third election campaign as a Conservative candidate. I've been married to my wife Lisa for 20 years. We have one son and love living and working here in Chilliwack. It's a great community to raise a family.
I've been a Chilliwack resident my entire life. I've always lived here. I've been a teacher for about 20 years at Chilliwack Senior Secondary School for the most part. In that time, I've taught social studies, social justice, geography, and a number of other courses. I've been a volunteer at Ruth and Naomi's for many years, volunteer at Cyrus Center for many years. I'm a deacon in my church, City Life, and as a teacher, I've facilitated and ran and sponsored a number of clubs and programs, including the Diversity Alliance, Christian Students United, which used to be called Soul Tattoo, as well as the CSS Breakfast Program.
Well, my name is Arthur Green. I was born in Mission, BC in 1955, so I kind of dates myself, halfway through the last century. Went to school and I graduated in Agassiz High School in 1973. I'm one of those very rare people that actually went to one school their whole grade school life. I moved into the resource industries. I worked in the oil patch. I've worked in mining, and I worked as a logger, forest industry. I've had my own shake claims. We started, me and my dad, we were these entrepreneurs, and we cut shake wood and started our own business. From there, I moved into the motion picture industry, where I spent 35 years as a department head for some of the largest multinational corporations in North America. You could have asked me 10 years ago if I would ever have gotten into politics. I probably would have said, well, there's a better chance that we'd shake barehanded on the moon. But anyways, as the challenges of the world turned out, here I am, and I'm sitting in front of you, and we're about to talk politics, so there you go.
I've been a resident in Chilliwack since the age of 9. I've grown up here. I've raised my family here. Chilliwack is my home, and I'm proud to call it my home. I've always been involved and committed to this community through my professional work as well as my personal life. Professionally, I've worked with at-risk youth, families, seniors, and underprivileged. I feel I have firsthand experience and hands-on working experience with the people in this community, and I have a handle on what Canadians need and want from their MP. I'm running in this election because I believe it's time for forward-thinking leadership, somebody who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, somebody who wants to listen and engage with key stakeholders and community members, somebody who wants to be a voice to Ottawa, not Ottawa's voice to this community. I'm running for the Liberal Party because I believe the Liberal Party is the only party willing to move forward for our economy, for our communities, and for the people and Canadians.
Question 1. BC continues to deal with a skills crunch in many regions and key sectors. The province's economic future hinges on both attracting and training a workforce that can meet our growing labor needs. BC business and industry can become and remain competitive only by the continued investment in and maintenance of the highest standards of human capital. If elected, what will be the economic priorities for your government to help small businesses grow sustainably across British Columbia?
Well, this is exactly one of the reasons why I'm running for MP in this community, because the economic future of BC is important to me, and it's very important to the Liberal government. We need to make sure that Chilliwack Hope and the economy and small business continues to grow here. As your MP, I will do everything to support and maintain a well-trained workforce. I will bring together the key players, bring together our Indigenous community, our small businesses, investors, get them around the table talking, take their concerns and needs forward to the BC level and the federal level, making sure that our government is doing everything we can to continue to grow our economy. The Liberal Party has and will continue to invest in our future, in our economy, and well-paying jobs. Right now, we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in history. We have taken the small business tax from 11% to 9%. These are things that I am proud of and proud to be part of the Liberal government. And as your MP, I will work tirelessly to make sure that we are heard.
Well, you know, sustainable growth in small business relies on competitive access to markets and capital. Raising venture capital made easily accessible and an integrated system for business development must be made available. Some of the models in Europe have proven this system of entrepreneurial leadership. We'll establish a green venture capital fund to start viable startups, matching federal funds for locally raised capital. We'll also reduce the managerial and accounting duplication of red tape and bureaucratic filings, as well as legislate the requirement to consider impacts on small business in future legislation.
Yeah, and that's a very good question. One of the things that our party believes in is getting rid of the capital gains. We think that the capital gains is essentially a tax on investment, and you shouldn't want to tax the thing you want more of. The conventional wisdom says you only tax the thing you want less of. We also want to broaden out the acceleration capital cost allowance. This is a program that basically allows for, it speeds up the investment into machinery connected to industry, as well as in 2010 it was extended out to include clean energy. Now, we don't know why it's specific to some sectors and some industries and not to others. And so what we want to do is we want to expand that out so it would also include, say, farm equipment and other things that companies are doing to increase productivity. We also do want to lower the corporate tax rate down to a level of around 10%.
Well, I think there's a number of things that the federal government can do to help small businesses in British Columbia. The first thing is to make sure that we're competitive not only with Canadian markets, but with international markets. It's easy to set up. A lot of the small businesses that operate in Chilliwack could be operating anywhere around the world. So we have to have a competitive business environment. That means competitive tax rates, competitive payroll taxes. All of that needs to be a part of it. So we've committed, obviously, as Conservatives, to reducing the small business tax rate. We've fought hard against the changes that the Liberal government tried to impose on small businesses in this last Parliament because we knew how uncompetitive that would make small businesses if they went ahead. I think the other thing, the question mentions the workforce. I think we do have to do a better job of attracting both skilled immigrants to come to Canada to fill those economic opportunities where we have needs. We need to find the best people around the world. And we also need to do a better job, I think, of getting young people to get into those skilled trades, into those places where there are shortages, train them up for the jobs that are actually available. I think for too long there's been a gap between what people have been going to school, what they've been training for, and the jobs that are available at the end of the day. So we need to do a better job as governments and as society, quite frankly, to send people to those places where they're actually going to make a good living and fill those positions that are available to them.
A full 43% of all new job openings will require trades and technical training. Some will be amongst the highest demand jobs in the province. While the Industry Training Authority has had some success meeting this demand with over 7,000 certifications of qualifications issued in 2017 and 18, there is room for improvement. BC's completion rate is only about 37% compared to 40% in other provinces. What is your plan for improving the apprenticeship model in BC?
This is a tough question because it steps in on the issue of what is federal and what is provincial, and it's kind of a bit of a shared thing. I'm not sure the PPC has laid out a plan, so I can only talk about the kind of program I would be looking into. I think it might be worth looking into a voucher system that helps individuals to essentially figure out what skill areas they want to go into, what training they would need, help them with the cost, and perhaps have some incentives, such as when they complete their training, they get a bonus. When they complete a year in a place of work, they get another bonus, and the place that has placed them and has found that they are very useful in the job would also get a bonus. So there's incentives at the back end, not just a help at the front, to encourage individuals to stick with the program. If it's a voucher system, individuals would have much more choice as to where they would go and what training facilities they would go into, and that helps individuals to find themselves in a place they're comfortable more long term. And I think that's an approach that we could use. But as I have to say, I don't think the PPC has taken a strong position on this yet. We're still rolling out many aspects of our platform.
This is a real issue and concern in BC, and my plan as your MP is to meet and work with the experts, get them around the table, ITA, trade schools, public education, our Indigenous leaders, find out and listen what their views are, take those views forward to the provincial and federal level, and make sure that all levels of government are continuing to invest in our future. Making sure that health and safety are key components of training programs, providing engagement with students and incentives to keep them in school, continuing to partner and fund and improve other programs such as our Indigenous Skills Training Program and bringing more women into the trades. Together we can make BC an economy that we're proud of.
Well, I think the first thing when you hear those kind of numbers where only 37% of people are completing programs is you need to ask them why. Are they leaving those programs because there's not a job at the end of it? Are they getting hired out of the program before they're even completed their training? I think you need to make those decisions based on the evidence from those people that are taking those courses. I think another thing that you can do to increase skilled trades is actually to invest in infrastructure projects that actually get not only announced but get built. I think that's been a big problem for this government, this Liberal government, is they've announced a number of infrastructure projects, but shovels in the ground has been a big problem. And the way that you get people into the trades is to have jobs available for them. And nowhere is that more important than in our energy sector, where we can have massive employment in things like LNG plants, in the oil sands. The pipeline, for instance, that has been approved years ago, has been announced as going ahead multiple times. If you don't actually get shovels in the ground, you don't put people to work, and you don't have the tradespeople getting the jobs that they need to support their families. So we need to have confidence that projects that are approved are going to get built, and that's something that I think a Conservative government would make a priority.
Well, I think a big problem that we've had right across North America is that technology is moving so fast that we haven't been able to keep up with the necessary skill set. We've moved from a large labor-based economy towards more innovation and technology. Then to complicate the matter even further, our lifestyle and cost of living has risen drastically, challenging employers in keeping non-transient workforce. What I believe we need is a national apprenticeship program to work in conjunction with the provincial secondary and post-secondary education systems. We should be offering workforce strategy training options to seniors in high school as well as post-secondary students.
In many parts of Canada and virtually everywhere in BC, there is a serious lack of rental housing. The increasing demand means soaring prices, not only in major city centres, but also in rural and retirement communities. As prices increase, builders are incentivized to build new units for sale rather than for rent. The rising cost of housing and the lack of rental stock in BC is making it hard to attract and retain workers in high-demand regions such as Vancouver, Kelowna, and Victoria. With an estimated 1 million people moving to the Greater Vancouver region alone, upward pressure on prices will increase if supply of housing doesn't increase at a similar rate. By increasing capital cost allowance and eliminating the GST for rental housing units, the federal government can dramatically increase supply and profitability to both owners and developers of purpose-built rental housing. Would your government make changes to capital gains if invested in purpose-built rental properties?
As this is identified as an issue that is really important to this riding, as your MP, I would want to get these people together around the table in this sector and take this issue forward. Work with other colleagues work with people at the provincial level, other MPs, Member of Parliament, to see what is happening across the province and across Canada. The Liberal Party has shown that we are concerned and we want to see our economy grow. I want to just quickly touch on two things that I'm very proud of in our own community that the Liberal government has done. One would be investing in the new National Housing Strategy. We now have a 4-story, 67-unit that's well underway on Webb Avenue that is invested just for low-income rentals. We also, together with the provincial government, invested over $7 million to make sure that Ruth and Naomi's was affordable housing for low-income mothers. We are doing what we can, and we will continue to do more and make sure that Canadians have affordable housing.
Thank you for the question. I think there's a multitude of things that the federal government can do to increase the housing supply. I think one of the things they should look at absolutely is the capital gains system, the disincentives that exist in the Income Tax Act to prevent that kind of investment. I think it needs to be looked at in totality, though. There are other things that are preventing the free market from getting into the rental market. And one of them, I've talked to real estate agents in the community. They keep talking about the Liberal stress test, which is actually making it much harder for people to qualify for mortgages, which has a downward effect on the entire housing market. I had a housing roundtable with everyone from social housing advocates to developers to real estate agents to social service delivery folks, and everyone agreed that we need to have a whole of society approach to this, really. The government can't solve the problem by itself. There is a need for social housing. That will take off some pressure, but it's a very small portion of the population that benefits from that. If we don't have incentives for people to use the free market to buy their first home, and people to move into a bigger home and free up space along the whole continuum, and all the way up to seniors going into assisted living facilities, you have to address the whole thing, or else those openings, the first-time home buyers won't be able to get into the market, and then you're not getting people moving through the continuum. So there's a lot that needs to be done. I think the market can solve a lot of these issues. The City of Chilliwack has done some innovative things recently by allowing basement suites and carriage homes, and allowing more homes, more population density, and I think that's going to be part of it. So the federal government has a role to play, but so do the other levels of government, and quite frankly, so does the market.
Yeah, as I've already said, we want to get rid of the capital gains outright. So as far as changing it, no, we want to get rid of it. And then on the issue, you also mentioned GST. We also want to get rid of the GST so that the provinces can basically raise their PSTs. And then when they control that, it would be harmonized already automatically, because they would be the only ones to control it. They would then be able to use the capital from that to invest in things like healthcare and education without holding out their hand to the federal government asking for more money on those things. This would also give them more control to shape it to their particular needs. When it comes to housing, the issues in British Columbia are very different from, say, the issues in Saskatchewan. So we don't want to try and force a solution onto all the provinces. We want the provinces to have the flexibility to come up with their own solutions on a thing like that. The other thing that will help on the housing price is if we can bring in some extra controls and fine-tuning to our immigration policies. If we are bringing in huge numbers of individuals year after year, mostly going to Vancouver and Toronto, we can't assume that that's not one of the things that's driving up the cost of housing in those areas. So at some point, we need to start having much more targeted immigration towards our economic needs and bring the numbers down. We want to reform the immigration system so it works better for all Canadians, including new Canadians.
One of the biggest drivers of unaffordability has been provincial government's reluctance to banning foreign ownership. This is driving up prices and cashing in on the inflated property transfer taxes. This has caused massive inflation in the housing market. We must not let foreign investors create any additional stress to an already overly competitive market. We need to create a market supply that is conducive to market affordability. The stress that has already been created, inflationary pressures in every aspect of the economy, including wages and building supplies. Using capital gains reductions is not going to satisfy a healthy market reduction in affordability. The benefit of capital gains is to the sole benefit of the seller of the capital investment, and not necessarily that of the purchaser, and especially to those who may have to borrow their down payment from old Aunt Ruth. The real solution for housing affordability will have to come from major government investment in simple housing affordability. This would include tiny homes, smaller condominiums, repurposed older buildings, cooperatives, and even mobile housing, as our current housing strategies are simply unsustainable. So if we can build an affordable housing unit that we can keep them in the realm of the provincial income tax assistance rates, we could actually be creating a capital investment with money that we're currently giving away now that has absolutely no return on investment. This would result in a practical infinity of new construction jobs and solve the housing crisis in a practical, pragmatic, and affordable way, alleviating stress on the economy by not having to overuse the resources of our social welfare and safety net systems.
Tax competitiveness in BC has seen its position slip considerably, particularly as it relates to our export industries. Given that Canada's debt level has increased despite a relatively strong economy, there is concern about the precedent set by not having balanced budgets and how it may impact future government spending initiatives. What is your plan to ensure Canada's debt burden remains low and affordable today and for future generations?
Canada has low, if not the lowest, taxation rates in the G7. Especially multinational corporations. We believe that large companies need to pay their fair share of taxes. As for the theory that lower taxes will create employment, is simply not true. There's no evidence to support it. One of the most effective taxes that lays burden on business is the HST, or harmonized sales tax. If we could harmonize our VAT, or value-added tax, we could raise considerable revenue to pay down our debt. We believe also that raising the corporate tax rates back to where they were in the 1990s would offer corporations the opportunity to alleviate the burden from small business and employees. This would also level the playing field for small businesses to compete with the large firms. Another issue that has been identified is the subsidies granted to resource export companies has proven to be a strain on our economic system. These subsidies have unfairly cost our economy multiple billions of dollars, propping up companies that otherwise would have created sustainable business models instead of relying on government subsidy.
Well, I think that's a very important question in this election is what are we going to do with the deficit? Justin Trudeau in the last election promised that there would be a balanced budget in 2019. He's over $30 billion blown past that promise. He has spent money at an unprecedented rate, growing the size of government, and I think most Canadians would say they don't have a lot to show for it. We've committed to balancing the budget within 5 years. We would like to do it sooner, but the deficit has been out of control, and we need to ensure that we protect the programs that Canadians have come to rely on. So when you have deficits and when you're adding to the debt, you're adding costs to Canadian taxpayers. For instance, the current national debt, the debt payments on that are about $30 billion a year. That's approaching how much we spend on health care from the federal government in this country. So if you continue to increase the debt and increase the deficit, you're taking money away from the programs that Canadians have come to rely upon. And the only way to, if you keep these deficits going out of control, the only way you pay them back is by raising taxes or cutting programs. So that's why I think you need to have responsible spending so that you can get back to a balanced budget, stop adding to the debt, and start paying it down again.
The Liberal government is committed into investing into what matters most: good paying jobs, investing into our seniors to make sure that they can retire in comfort, investing into our families, raising the lower income up to the middle class. We've done this with the child tax benefit, where we brought 300,000 children out of poverty in the last 4 years. We need to continue to make sure that we are investing in the people that need it the most. Affordable housing, creating good paying jobs, ensuring that our seniors can retire in confidence, providing a fair pharmacare program where prescription drugs are affordable for all, the meanwhile building our economy. These are promises that the Liberal government wants to continue to build on in the next 4 years. And I am committed as your MP to make sure that Chilliwack Hope is not left behind and our community is invested into as well.
Yeah, and this is something the PPC cares an awful lot about. We consider any type of deficit spending, unless it's for short-term emergencies, to basically be a form of taxation without representation on future generations. And if we actually want to give the future a fighting chance, we should be bringing our deficits and our debts under control, and this is a real problem. What we want to do is put certain things on the chopping block, like business subsidies. There was a study done in 2013 from Calgary University that basically found that our subsidies, both direct and indirect, for businesses is about $16 billion. Now, if we look through those and find which ones are good versus which ones could probably be done away with, we could maybe, save $8 billion just there. Immigration, according to professor from Simon Fraser, now retired, he looked at it and he calculated that there was about a $30 billion drag on the economy right now due to the imbalance between the incomes of new immigrants versus, the native-born Canadians. And there's lots of reasons for this, but that basically means that they wind up having more service money going out versus the amount of money coming in, more expenditure versus revenue. And it's about a $30 billion issue. That's per year. Now, if we can fine-tune the immigration and make it work more in our favor, we can cut a lot of that out. Then we just have to start looking at all the other areas where there's been tremendous waste within our system. I mean, earlier, last year, I think, or perhaps earlier this year, we had the Trudeau government revealed that they had already authorized an $18 million investment into a private airport for a private golf course. I have no idea how you justify that. My understanding is it was since canceled because people were outraged by it. But these kinds of spending announcements make virtually no sense. And we should be looking at a whole lot of the ways that we do our financing and see, well, where can we cut? What can we cut that's not going to actually hurt and impact, the typical Canadian?
The federal election is on October 21st. If you recently moved, became a Canadian citizen, or are voting for the first time, make sure you're registered to vote. You can check or update your information with Elections Canada. It's our vote.
For the official information you need to vote, visit elections.ca or call 1-800-463-6868.
much for coming out and making this an important part of your evening. I know there's so many things pressing for our time today, and it's just really good to see all of you turn out and come here and make this an important part of your night. So just give yourselves a quick round of applause for that. And I also want to especially welcome our online audience. So we are streaming this live on the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel, as well as if you know anybody who wanted to be here and couldn't make it, tell them to go to theprogress.com and click on the YouTube channel, and or the YouTube link on theprogress.com. And they can watch it live, and it'll be up there as well, recorded in the days to come. So before we get started with the official part of the program, I just wanted to first acknowledge and be grateful that we're here on the traditional Stolo First Nations territory. And I also want to acknowledge some of the key sponsors and hosts of tonight's event. So first of all, I'd like to thank GGP Video, who is live streaming this event and is making everything possible for us to make sure it's available for you at a later date as well. So let's give GGP Video and Robbie Snooks there a round of applause. And second of all, the Chilliwack Progress for being our media sponsor. I believe they're here as well. And they're also making this right here, and they're also making this live on their website. So thank you, Chilliwack Progress. And then the co-host for tonight's event is, first of all, the Chilliwack Downtown Business Improvement Association. Thank you very much for co-hosting this event. Thank you, Downtown BIA. And finally, the host of tonight's event, or the co-host of tonight's event, is the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. So thank you, Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. Now, for those of you who are wondering who I am, I have the distinct, my name is William Clausen, and I have the distinct honor and privilege, and I do say that genuinely, that it's an honor and a privilege to serve as the president of the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce this year. At the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce, we really only have one mission, and that is making it easy to do good business in Chilliwack. So that's what we do, make it easy to do good business in Chilliwack. And we do that by focusing on 4 anchors, and they spell the word care. So first of all, we connect our members together to make sure they can continue making great relationships. We advocate for them, to candidates, governments, policymakers. We advocate making sure that it's continuing to be easy to do good business in Chilliwack. The R of care is recognition. We recognize our members because of the great stuff they're doing in our community. And finally, the E is we educate our members on policies, issues, and things that may affect them down the road. So that is care. And tonight, as you can have guessed, we're advocating, we're informing government hopefuls of the issues that are real and meaningful for Chilliwack, and we're educating. We're educating ourselves on what our future voice in our voice to come in Ottawa will be. So also I don't think Sarah's up here. I'll also have Sarah up here who will be helping with some of the technology. You're going to see a lot of the technology here that we're using. I'm going to introduce that in a sec. For those of you who are part of the municipal debates, we use very similar technology. The first thing I want to say, though, is that federal elections matter. Federal elections matter because of the taxes we pay. Federal elections matter because we care about what happens to that tax money. And federal elections matter because they impact our families. They impact the policies and programs that are available and are put down to us. Federal elections matter because they impact the businesses and the organizations that are one of the cornerstones of any thriving community. So federal elections matter because when those businesses and organizations are affected, they affect the very livelihoods that allows us to do everything that we do. We wouldn't have the livelihoods and the incomes we do without those organizations in our thriving community. So, and the reason I say that, you get that. That's why you're here, because federal elections matter. I'm giving you 2 reasons why I wanted to say that. First of all is, if there's somebody who you know should have been here or isn't here, reach out to them. Tell them to get online, watch the debate. I know we have an online audience already. If they're interested and couldn't make it, there's that opportunity. There's no excuse for them not to become informed of this election. And the second reason is that every election, there's always some hot button topic. There's always some political issue or some issue that is real and it matters. It matters deeply to many of us. And when we present those issues and are solely focused on those issues, and we forget all the other pieces, we run an inherent risk of not being able to collaborate together anymore. And we want to try to avoid that with some of the technology today to make sure you get a well-rounded view and a well-rounded informing to your candidate and from your potential candidate. So I want to leave you with a bit of a metaphor as we start the evening. I'm sure you know how one sharpens a knife. We take a piece of steel or we take a stone and we take the knife and we rub them together and we create an essential ingredient for the sharpest possible knife, and that's friction. So in order for us to have a conversation and come up with the best ideas, because I'm sure you want the best ideas, the sharpest candidate and the best policies for Chilliwack Hope, you want them in Ottawa, coming down from Ottawa as well. So when we are discoursing tonight, let's think about that. If the sharpening isn't happening as fast as we would like or the way we would like, the last thing we want to start doing is chipping away at the stone and splintering it, because now we don't have a stone to sharpen against anymore, and we run the risk of being alone. So when you ask questions tonight and when we inform each other, let's remember that iron sharpens iron, but chipping away at each other's integrity, our voice, all it does is dull our own knife, and it dulls the others as well. So with that in mind, your questions, we're going to take your questions. I'm going to explain that in a sec. We're going to use a piece of technology called slido.com. You'll see it up there. I'll explain how it works in a minute. The questions are going to come in. They're being moderated backstage, and they're being moderated. I'm going to give you the context of how they're being moderated. So if you're wondering why your question isn't coming through or it's not popping up on screen, it may help out. We're moderating the questions for respect of individuals, obviously. For the context, are they questions that are relevant and are they contextually asked in a way that is sharp on the policies and issues and not taking shots at each other. And we're also moderating out questions that may do any, antagonizing, blaming, judging, shaming. And also we're very focused on the questions that affect our businesses and organizations, not-for-profit organizations, whatever organization, and we're really focused on how they affect those organizations. So let's get into the format for a sec and our technology. So the way the debate's going to work tonight is we're going to have probably 6 rounds of questions. So you're going to hear from every candidate a minimum of 8 times, and probably around 24 different questions we're going to tackle. And you get to choose those questions. So what we're going to do is have an introduction. Each candidate will get 1 minute to introduce themselves. They have a trusty timer up here that'll keep them on target, because I'm afraid to let politicians speak 8 times in a row. We'll see where that takes us. Sorry. And then we're going to have 3 rounds of general questions, just questions that can apply to any candidate or any situation. And then we're going to have 2 rounds where candidates will answer questions that are specifically directed at them and their policies, their platform, their whatever it may be. And then we're going to close out with a round where each candidate is going to be able to answer a question that they may not have been able to answer earlier, because we're randomly generating who answers which question. So they can then speak to that question. And if we may have a little bit of extra time, because I see we're unfortunately 1 candidate short tonight, we may have a little time, and we'll just allow for another round of individual questions where they can answer a question they would like to answer. And then we close out with 1 minute of conclusions. So just a note to candidates before I introduce you is, remember, while we're going through the questions, write down a question that you didn't get a chance to answer, because you do get a chance to answer that one later. We're not going to keep track of all the questions, so I'm leaving that up to you to say, hey, this is a topic that I didn't get to answer, but I'd like to answer, and then you get to speak to that. And also, just quickly, before I tell you the actual technology, we're also using a little random generator. So in round 1, we're going to pick 3 people to answer question number 1. 3 people are going to answer question number 2. Those 3 people are randomly generated up here. So there's no rigging, there's no, everything is randomly generated. And as you know, our candidates are also sitting in alphabetical order. So let's talk about Slido for a sec. If you have technology with you tonight and are apt to use it, I'd like you to first turn off your ringer. That's the first thing you should do on the technology. And then the second thing is go to slido.com. And when you go to slido.com, it'll pop up with an event code. It'll ask you for an event code. Punch in or type in Federal Debate CHWK. You'll see it up there. type that in, and this works from home, this works from wherever you are. Slido.com, Federal Debate Chilliwack, click on Join. When you click on Join, you're going to be asked to join a room. The first 3 rounds, we're going to start with the general room. That means everybody's questions. However, if at any time you want to ask a specific question to a specific candidate, at the very top, you'll see all the rooms. You just click on the drop-down box. I can show it up there. You'll see it on my screen. It's at the very top. It just says Panel Questions All. I can change to a different room, ask that candidate a question. Now, here's the trick. We will not allow questions that have already been asked. So if you see a question that you like, give it a thumbs up. So you won't see it on here, but you'll see it on your own questions. There will be a little thumb on the top right corner. Give it a thumbs up. You've just voted that question to the top. That's how you get me to ask them the question. The more votes a question gets, the more likely it is that I'm going to ask that question. And so if you scroll all the way through the questions, if the one you like is there, give it a thumbs up. If the one you want is not there, then go back to the top and type in your question, hit submit, and it'll be moderated in. And if the question isn't being coming up for some reason, because it might have got moderated out for some reason, there's going to be, do we have our 2 people in the audience with phones? Where are they? Nicole? Where's Nicole? So there's Carlene and Nicole. Okay, so if you can have a look, that's Nicole standing on the, sorry for pointing, that's Nicole standing over on your right, and this is Carlene over on your left. If you don't have the technology, sorry if you're at home or anywhere else, I can't provide you that help. But if you don't have technology with you but would like to ask a question, you can ask Carlene or Nicole. Put up your hand and they'll come over and help you. They can also help you if possibly your question isn't coming in. So they can allow you to help you with that as well. So is everybody on the technology? Because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a poll. I'm going to poll you. I'm going to ask you a question. So have Slido ready. And what's going to happen is your screen's going to change, and there's going to be a question that's going to ask you whether you have decided who you're going to vote for. If you're fairly confident to yes, you click on yes. And if you're not quite sure to an absolute no, I have not yet decided, click on the no. So I will bring that poll live. So there's the question. Heading into tonight's debate, I have already decided who I will be voting for. And there is your answers coming in. Okay? So we have about 40 people that have answered, 45. And I'll just give you another 30 seconds to a minute. You should have that poll up. If you don't, Nicole or Carlene could help you with that. And you can do this from home or from wherever you are. So I'll just give you another 30 seconds there. Heading into tonight's debate, I have already decided who I'll be voting for. We have over 70 people that have submitted their responses. And I know we probably have a couple hundred people here, plus our online audience, so we're getting a fairly good representation. So candidates, this is telling you also how much work you have to do. Or how many loyal followers you have. Loyal supporters, I should say. So we're at 87. Can we get 100? Can we get 100? Okay, just another 10, 15 seconds before I shut the poll down. Okay, we got 93, 94. Guess I'm not going to hit my goal of 100. We got 4, 3, 2. Okay, you're going to make me wait to 100. You're going to make me wait. You can't do this to me. 98 people. I need 2 people. No, the amount of people that have come in. Okay, we'll leave it at 98. So, oh yes, we have hit 100. I'm sure there's some people who carry 2 or 3 cell phones, isn't there? Use them. Okay, now we've broken through a barrier. So yes, 64% of you have a high degree of confidence that you know who you're voting for. You either have loyal supporters or you have your work cut out for you. And 35% though, that's a high number, are not sure yet who they're going to vote for. So we're hoping that this debate will be very informative for you and also our candidates. So before I'll shut down the poll, and I will have another poll for you at the end. and then we'll get started in the questions. So just bear with us as we work all the glitches out of our technology, but it's working good so far. We have a timer, we have an iPad doing our team generation, and we have moderators up back, and we have this presenting here. So first of all, I'm just going to introduce the candidates, and then I'm going to each give them a minute to introduce themselves. So we have Rob Buganovic from the People's Party. Welcome. Let's give them a round of applause. And then we have Art Green from the Green Party. I was going to say Art Green Party, but welcome. And then we have Heather McQuillan from the NDP, New Democratic Party. Unfortunately, Dorothy Jean O'Donnell is not here that we know of. And next we have Mark Strahl, Conservative Party. And we have Kelly Valonis, Liberal Party.
The undecided.
That's the undecided.
Okay, so with all due respect, we're very passionate about who we support and what platform we support, so let's just keep that right there and make sure that we stay sharp on what we're doing rather than chipping away at each other. So I'm going to ask Sarah to join me, and I believe we have, what we'll do with the introduction, I'm going to let each candidate, starting alphabetically ascending, so Rob, you get to start, and you get 1 minute to introduce who you are, what you stand for, or whatever you would like to say. That'll be your minute, and we'll just go. And the minute you start talking is when your timer starts.
Okay.
Okay? And as I warned you earlier, all your mics are live, so no side deals, because we'll hear it. Okay? So go ahead whenever you're ready.
So yeah, I'm Rob Buganovic, and I was born and raised in Chilliwack. I'm a deacon at City Life Church. I'm a teacher at Chilliwack Senior Secondary. I teach social studies and social justice. I believe in the free market, free trade, freedom of expression, conscience, and religion. All are under attack in this country, and I want a Canada to remain strong and free, and I'm hoping that you will agree.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Arthur Green. I was born in Mission, BC. I was raised in the Eastern Fraser Valley and graduated at Agassiz Secondary. Upon graduation, I immediately began a career with the BC Forest Service in forest management and protection. From there, I moved into the resource sectors of oil and gas, mining, and logging. I then studied at Fraser Valley University, after which I began my own financial services firm and incorporated the Green Shelters Corporation. I then became a department head in the BC motion picture industry and worked for some of the largest mass media corporations in North America. I ran in my first election in 2015 for the Green Party of Canada in the longest campaign in Canadian history in the new riding of Mission, Matsqui, Fraser Canyon. I then ran in the 2017 provincial election for the BC Greens in the riding of Fraser-Nicola. It's a great honor to do so, and among an array of astute candidates that I'm with tonight, and I wish them all the best of luck, as I believe that collaboration of political parties is the real answer to the problem as a nation.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Heather McQuillan. I am a technician in the Film Union here in BC. IATSE 891. I'm an advocate for workers there. In December, I welcomed a son, and my husband and I looked at our situation and wondered how we were going to handle childcare, what kind of a world we were going to hand over to him. And we started a nonprofit. It's called Moms in Film, and I thought it was going to be 5 moms, but we got hundreds of emails. And we started discussing what kind of a planet we were going to be handing over to our children, and felt it was really important to get involved. So we've been working with government officials to change some of those legislations that make it difficult, and we'd like to continue the work with the NDP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Strahl. I was born and raised right here in Chilliwack. I've been married to my wife Lisa for 20 years, and our son turns 15 next week. We love this remarkable community. It's been an honor to serve the people of Chilliwack Hope for the last 8 years as your Member of Parliament. As a member of the official opposition Conservatives, I've helped to hold Justin Trudeau to account in Ottawa. Now Canadians can hold him accountable as well. After 4 years, Justin Trudeau has shown that he cannot be trusted. He broke his promises on balancing the budget, on reforming the electoral system, and on running an ethical and transparent government, to name just a few. More and more Canadians feel like they're barely getting by under this Liberal government, and that's simply not good enough. On October 21st, Canadians can elect a new Conservative government led by Andrew Scheer, a government that will live within its means, lower your taxes, and put more money in your pockets, because it's time for you to get ahead.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Kelly Valonis, and I have lived in the Fraser Valley for the past 43 years. I've grown up here. I raised my family here. This is my home. I am committed both professionally and personally to these communities. Currently, I am the Executive Director for the Chilliwack and District Seniors Resource Society, a role that I take great pride in, one that allows me to advocate for and work with seniors to make sure they're getting the programs and the services that they need. Prior to this, I worked for the Greater Vancouver YMCA, bringing programs to at-risk youth into the community, working with youth through crisis, and helping them find opportunities to move forward and be successful. For the past 20 years, I've worked in the nonprofit industry, and this has helped me work with people at all different levels and levels of government and bring people together to get the job done. People have called me tenacious. Some have said I'm a dog with a bone, which means I don't give up and I don't back down from a challenge. Most recently on social media, I've been called a clown, but that doesn't resonate with me, and I'll leave that up
Your
to you
time's
tonight.
up, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, so this is going to be round one, and what we're going to do for round one is we're going to post a question up there, and then we've randomly generated 3 people, possibly 2 or 3, who are going to answer the question. It was going to be 3 and 3, but it'll be 3 and 2. So the first question that I'll be asking, and remember, you get to choose this question by making sure that question gets the most votes. So I have absolutely no idea what the next question is, but I'll get it up there, and then we will. Just one sec here, sorry. Alrighty, so our top question is going to be, homelessness, addiction, and crime affect local businesses in our downtown core. What is your plan to deal with these integrated challenges? And why do you believe addiction, crime, and homelessness issues have not yet been solved? So we're going to have 3 people answering this question, and our first candidate to be answering this is Art Green.
Well, this is a very big issue, not just in Chilliwack, though we have about 400 people that are homeless in Chilliwack, but right across the province and actually right across North America. I think the big issue is that we've gone from a labor-intense economy to one of innovation and technology, and that we've left a lot of people behind. There's not much work available for people that don't have that skill set. So what we're proposing is a guaranteed livable income for all Canadians, so that we can get people out of the poverty, above the poverty line, and create affordable housing for all Canadians. That's my answer. Thanks.
Thank you. And up next, Rob Buganovic.
Yeah, this is a tough question because these all are integrated issues. And when you look at them, they can appear almost beyond the pale, like how do we respond to these 3 threats? Now, the RCMP needs additional funding. We need to make sure that they have the resources, that they can take on issues of crime, and that should help some of the problems. We need to deal with the housing issue, and that can only be done by looking at both the things that are raising demand as well as working at measures that will increase the supply. Right now, a lot of the arguments that are being put forth only are looking at the supply. The PPC wants to deal with the demand side of this equation. And for addiction, we need to make sure that our communities are open and welcoming in a way that people find themselves connected. Because when people don't find themselves connected, when they find themselves lonely in this society, that's when addiction just knocks on the door.
And finally, Mark Stroll.
Well, thank you very much. I think the second part of that question is one that's important. Why do you believe addiction, crime, and homelessness issues haven't been solved? I think, quite frankly, from what I've come to know, there's not enough detox beds, there's not enough treatment centers, and there's not enough recovery services. When an addict or has come to that point where they want to get clean and they go to our system and they say, okay, I'm ready, and we say, come back in 6 weeks, that's not good enough. And that's often what happens. People don't get that opportunity when they're ready to get the services that they need. So we need to work on that. I think, quite frankly, Chilliwack, with the Chilliwack Healthier Community Service Group, with the Task Force on Homelessness, is taking strides in the right direction. We're all working together to try to find solutions, and that's what it's going to take to make things better, especially in our downtown core.
So for our next question, we are going to, here's our next question. What is your plan to make life more affordable for Canadians? And we have Kelly Valonis first.
I think we're on a good start with this. I think as we see that we've got 1 million more jobs in the past 4 years, we have the lowest unemployment rate in history. We are moving forward on this. We are going to continue as a Liberal government to make sure that we're investing in communities. And for me as an MP, that's where I want to start. I want to start looking at what Chilliwack and Hope needs, making sure that we're investing in our small businesses, making sure that we're partnering with our BC government and with our local government here, that we're creating jobs. And there's a big key player in here that sometimes we forget, and that's our Indigenous community. They have so much hectares of land that we could be building with them in partnership to build jobs, to build community. So for me, I think that's where it is. Sorry.
Thank you. And Heather.
All right. This was a big part of why we supported this platform so firmly. We are going to invest in 500,000 new affordable homes over the next 10 years. We are going to ensure that the minimum wage is raised to $15 an hour. We are going to crack down on money laundering and establishing a federal foreign buyers tax to make sure that people can afford homes here where they live. We will be capping cell phone and internet fees. We're also going to be working on a expanded $200 a month childcare pilot program to make affordable childcare a reality for more families. I still got time. Great. We are going to be investing in creating 300,000 new jobs in energy-efficient retrofits, affordable housing, renewable energy, infrastructure, and transit. We will make new rules to make sure that part-time and contract workers get the same benefits and compensation as full-time workers. We've seen too much of a split in companies not wanting to pay workers, so not hiring full-time, and workers deserve to really have that from their companies. They put so much time and energy into making companies a success, and we want to see that coming right back to the workers.
So just a quick reminder that if any of those questions you have not been able to answer it, you will be able to answer that question at the final round. So just going to go to round 2. This is another question. So, and also remember, audience, that if there's questions that are in the list that are not yet at the top, feel free to engage and give them thumbs up and give us some more indications of what we need to be asking. Sorry, I just need to get rid of this question. Alrighty, a question has popped up that is come past the other question. It has more votes, so that's good. So the next question is, what are your thoughts about the Trans Mountain Pipeline and how it may affect Chilliwack Hope? So for this, we're going to start with Rob Boganovic.
Yeah, the Trans Mountain Pipeline is always a challenge for me because I do believe in strong environmental regulations, and the Trans Mountain has a lot of individuals who see it as a major threat to the environment. And we have to make sure that we have the maximum protection upon the environment. But at the same time, the Trans Mountain has become a national unity issue, with Alberta and Saskatchewan really angry over the fact that they can't get oil to Tidewater. And because it's a national unity issue, we need to make sure that this pipeline gets built. Otherwise, we could lose the Canada that we love. Now, we are ready to use constitutional measures like Section 91 and 92 within the Constitution. We believe that these sections allow us to advance a project of this national importance. And so we are ready to act to make sure this pipeline happens.
Thank you. And Art Green.
Well, first of all, the Trans Mountain Pipeline is for the sole purpose of transporting bitumen. It's not oil. It's a mine product. It's basically sand, and it's mixed with diluent. The price for it is probably around $20 a cubic meter for the product. The only benefit for the Trans Mountain Pipeline is for the people that work in the oil industry. It's actually a loss leader. They don't really have a market for it yet. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen. If there's ever a spill, it doesn't float. It sinks to the bottom of the ocean. It'll instantly destroy the bottom of the ocean. It's going to be transported in tankers that are 3 times the size of the ones that they're using now that actually export oil. It'll go from 7 tankers a month to 30 tankers a month. That's if they actually find a market for it. The only good thing that I can say about the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion is that it'll replace the current pipeline, which is about approximately 65 years old, which is referred to jokingly by its own employees as the Great Soaker Hose. I have talked to constituents who are under the illusion that this is a good product, that it should be exported. It's not a good product, and we're definitely against it. And if we form if we become the official opposition, or not the official opposition.
Thank you. And Heather McQuillan.
I was really hoping to get to speak on this. This is a concern when I started speaking to constituents. This was a big topic that came back to me. And, as much as I can see a lot of livelihoods and a lot of incomes are tied to this pipeline, it goes right over an aquifer, and it's the only source of water for Chilliwack. It doesn't make sense to take that risk. Now, I grew up in Saskatchewan, I've lived in Alberta. I know that there's a lot of support and there's a lot of tension between provinces based around the pipeline. Really, that anger and that tension comes from the fact that if this pipeline doesn't go through, people are concerned about feeding their families. So we look to taking care of those families, helping them transition to new green energy jobs. And a lot of that tension goes away when people know they can feed their families.
Thank you. So our next question is, what specific plans do you have to increase access to mental health services for Canadians? And we'll be asking this question to Mark Strahl.
Thank you very much. Andrew Scheer has written to every province and territory to inform them that a new Conservative government would increase funding for health and social transfers each and every year. And I think by doing that, by saying that that funding is guaranteed, that will continue to go forward, it allows the provinces and territories who do deliver health care services to have certainty and to make plans that allow them to address this issue. I also think that Canadians need to continue to speak out about the stigma surrounding mental health. Most of us have people that have suffered from mental health issues or continue to suffer from mental health issues in our families, and we need to demand that all levels of government take this seriously. I have noticed that a number of provincial governments have specifically brought members into cabinet, ministers of state or ministers responsible for mental health directly, and I think that is something that the federal government should look at, to have a minister specifically tasked with raising the issue of mental health at the cabinet table.
Thank you. And Kelly Valonis.
I believe that mental health should be an essential service, and we are one of the few provinces that hasn't incorporated this yet. And from my work that I've done here on the Chilliwack Healthy Communities, I see every day the impact that mental health has. I also see the impact mental health has because it's affected my own family. And when these services aren't available, or we can't afford these services because they're only available to people that have a payer plan, it really makes it difficult, and it only taxes our medical system even more. Our Liberal government is looking towards the future of incorporating mental health services within our plan. We know that first and foremost, mental health has a lot to do with housing, it has to do with homelessness, it has to do with addiction, and it has to do with crime. And these are the issues that are facing businesses in our town, in Chilliwack and in Hope. And if we can come together as a community and recognize this, then we can work towards a better plan.
Thank you. So I just want to welcome Dorothy Jean O'Donnell. I'll just give her a minute to sit down. Thank you. Welcome. So we're going to go to round 3, and the question that we have at the top, so remember, if you have not yet voted on this question, it is one of the questions you would like to have answered next. You can still vote them up, and they'll still start coming to the top of our list. So this is round 3, and just for your benefit, Dorothy Jean, is we're asking general questions, and we're just randomly selecting a name. So if your name is selected, then we'll be asking you to answer the question. You get a minute and a half. I know you didn't have a time for introduction, but at the end you get a 1 minute to conclude and say some closing marks as well. So here is, for the next question, transportation is an issue in the Fraser Valley. How do you plan to connect us with Vancouver and the rest of BC? And first up is Mark Stroll.
Well, thank you very much. I think that consecutive federal governments have made massive investments in infrastructure right across the country. The problem right now, though, is that the BC NDP and their Green partners have cancelled a massive expansion of the Trans-Canada Highway. They scaled that back when they came to power. It was funded and planned to come all the way to Whatcom Road, and that was cancelled. I think that's a major issue. We have seen certainly more and more people are moving to this part of the country because it's more affordable, but that means they're driving more and more to get to work. So we need to expand the Trans-Canada Highway back at least to where the old plan was, to Whatcom Road, and eventually to Chilliwack. I think that is the reality for the majority of people, that they are going to continue to need to drive to work, and we need to expand our highway system to allow for that.
Thank you. And next up is Heather McQuillan.
So we have plans to expand affordable transit for everyone, including expanded bus service into rural regions like the Kootenays and northern BC, and as well as Chilliwack. We are making investments into making ferries more affordable for BC by boosting federal funding to help bring down fares and reservation fees. We really believe in public transit, and we think everybody should have accessibility to public transit. So that is definitely one of our focuses. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final answer for this question is Kelly Valonis.
Thank you. Mark, unfortunately that answer just really isn't resonating with me that you gave, because the money was announced for that highway from the federal government. So I believe then, as an MP, then we better be making sure that we're working with that level of government to make sure that this highway goes through. This affects me and it affects a lot of other people. My husband gets up at 4:30 in the morning to drive down that highway to go to work, and he gets home at 7 o'clock at night. Now, you can't tell me that then he's providing in a way for his family that's beneficial, because we don't ever get to see him. So when the money's there from the federal government, is it not the MP's role to make sure that money is used the way it should be, or working collaboratively at least with the provincial level and with the level here to make sure that it happens? Ask those tough questions and get the job done.
Thank you. So for our next question, and this is the final question in round 3, so after this we'll be going to individual questions for candidates. So if, audience, if you have not yet gone into each room, you can vote. Every candidate has at least 2 questions in their room already, so you can go in there, ask questions to a specific candidate that may not have been answered yet, and vote the ones up that are in there. So go at the top of your screen, go to the room that you're looking for, and ask those questions. So for the last question in this round for general questions, it is imperative that regulations are implemented that will quickly decrease carbon emissions. The new economy needs to have a focus on small business that is sustainable. What will your party do to address climate change? And first up, we have Arthur Green.
Well, the Green Party has put together a plan called Mission Possible. It's a 20-point plan that will deal with climate change in a very comprehensive manner. Some of the things that we'll do, first of all, we'll declare a climate emergency. We'll establish an inter-cabinet of all parties. We'll set stringent new targets, assume leadership. We'll respect the evidence that is given. We'll maintain carbon pricing. We'll ban fracking. We'll green the grid and modernize the grid. We'll plug into more EVs. We'll get Canada back on track. We'll complete a national building retrofit, turn off the tap to all oil imports, switch to biodiesel, create new partnerships for renewables, call for all hands on deck, prioritize adaptation, change planes. We'll cancel the F-35s, and we'll buy more water bombers to protect communities from forest fires, and we'll curtail other greenhouse gas sources and restore carbon sinks by planting a lot more trees.
Thank you. So Dorothy Jean O'Donnell.
The crucial issue about climate change...
Can we just make sure your mic is down closer? Sorry.
The crucial issue about climate change is it emphasizes the need for people's empowerment. The thinking that you're going to find solutions to climate change through the cartel party system is wishful and doomed thinking. This party system, this cartel party system, concentrates power in the hands of a small minority, and the vast majority of the people are in a position where they're basically observers or at best cheerleaders to a process over which they have no control. It's actually quite liberating to know that these climate actions are going on, including a meeting right across the hall, that are not organized on a sectarian cartel party basis, but on the basis of uniting everybody to demand that this devastation of the environment that is occurring stop. We say that in this election, you should empower
Sorry, your time's up.
yourselves now.
Sorry, I didn't, the timer's right over there if you're looking, but yes, your time's up on 1.5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. And finally, Rob Bogdanovich.
Well, I actually have to reject the premise of the question. It is not imperative that we quickly reduce carbon emissions. And even if I believed that the worst-case forecasts of the IPCC were imminent, China is not going to peak its CO2 production until 2030, and China produces more CO2 than the United States, the European Union, and Canada combined. The hysteria around the carbon, issue is actually quite absurd. People seem to think that a panicked population is going to make better decisions. And when in history has that proven to be true? We have to have reasonable and sensible understandings of this issue and put forth good plans and good policies that have a long-term vision and are sensitive to the economy. If we study the data, sea levels are not presently, increasing in their rate of rise. We do not see that weather is becoming more erratic. We do not see more droughts or heat waves or hurricanes. What we see is individuals report about it like something is different. And that's just not what the data shows. So we have to have reasonable understanding and sensible policies when it comes to the issue of climate. Now, the PPC is not going to impose a one-size-fits-all solution to addressing climate change, but we will also not interfere with the provinces when they put forth plans to deal with carbon, and that's basically the central understanding that we have. It's a provincial issue because the Constitution says it was a provincial issue.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to the rooms, and we're going to start with Kelly Valonis. So I'm going to go to your room here for a minute, or your virtual room, and there is the top question for you is, the Liberals, despite having a majority government, have failed to deliver on their, and I would assume this meant on some of their, or on their 2015 election promises. So why should Canadians trust or believe the promises now?
We've actually delivered on almost 50% of our promises, which for me, for a first-time leader, is not that bad. We do have the lowest unemployment rate in history. We have the lowest poverty rate in history. We've created 1 million new jobs. That doesn't come out of thin air. In the past 4 years, we've done more in the last 10 years of the Harper government has done. We have the National Healthing Strategy, which has affected our community in 2 ways. The $7 million that was put into Ruth and Naomi's, and the 67-unit build on Webb Avenue that is for middle-income families. So not only did that hit the housing, but it also created jobs, and it also invested in small business. Rich Lane Construction was the beneficiary of that CMHC program. We are the only government with a plan for the future, for the environment and economy working together.
Thank you. So our next question is going to be for Dorothy Jean. And the question we have for you, please explain what a Marxist-Leninist stands for and why we need it in Chilliwack Hope riding.
The Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada was established in 1970 as CPCML and became registered as the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada in 1974. So we came out of the youth and student movement of the 60s, in which opposition to the war in Vietnam, against racial segregation and oppression, and for the rights of Indigenous people were topmost on the minds of youth and students. So we have developed over the last almost 50 years in the life of Canadian politics, concentrating on the need for people's empowerment. As I mentioned earlier, it's not some future. Right now, you need to empower yourselves. How can you empower yourselves? You can empower yourselves by talking with your workmates, your neighbors, your people in your community, working out what are your common concerns and interests, and mobilizing and fighting to have those come about. No, don't rely on others to do the fighting for you. It is crucial. It's not just on climate change that this is the case, but defending the rights of workers and everything else.
And next up we have Mark Strahl. and you probably already know what your question is if you got your phone there. Question is, what concrete examples can you give that illustrate how you have partnered with other levels of government to bring about positive change in Chilliwack Hope? Even though your party wasn't in power in the last 4 years, what have you been able to achieve?
Well, thank you very much. I certainly on concrete examples of partnering with other levels of government. I've been a member of the Chilliwack Healthier Communities Group, as we've discussed earlier, a group that comes together to bring about best practices from all sectors of the community, including the provincial and municipal governments. I'm a member of the Chilliwack Homelessness Task Force, which is very similar, working with service providers, municipal leaders, provincial leaders to address issues of homelessness. I've held roundtables on mental health services in our community, which have included municipal and provincial levels of government. Same with the roundtable on affordable housing, which have brought together people from all over the riding, including municipal and provincial leaders. I have a strong working relationship with the mayor, the councils, both in Chilliwack and Hope, and the MLAs, all three of them I have strong relationships with, have worked with them for the benefit of our community. When it comes to our community, I don't put a partisan hat on. That is, I work for the people of Chilliwack and Hope, no matter who's in power, no matter which level of government I'm in. If it's about building the community, you can count on me to be there to fight for this community.
Thank you. So the next question goes to Art Green, and your question is going to be, your party won't support Canadian pipelines, yet won't stop tanker traffic and oil imports from other countries. Isn't this contradictory?
Well, we're not in the position to be able to stop oil imports from other countries. If you've probably noticed that we've only have one elected member in the federal, or two now actually, in the federal government. It is our plan that if we were to ever form government, that we would stop importing foreign oil, and we would actually expand the oil industry in Alberta. But so we're obviously not going to expand the bitumen production, that's for sure. We do need our own supply of energy, but we do need to transfer much sooner than later. I think they've 190 scientists from 190 different nations around the world have told us that, you know, we have like 10 to 12 years to actually come up with a solution, or, you know, it's quite possible that we could enter cataclysmic climate change and runaway global warming. But by, you know, the end of the century, we could lose possibly 1 million species on Earth. So I don't think it's really fair to say that we support the importation of foreign oil, because we're actually against the importation of foreign oil.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Heather McQuillan. And what made you decide to run for MP in a community that you have no ties to? As voters, we have to live in our riding to vote. How is it possible that you can run and proceed to represent a community that you know, this is obviously an assumption that you know nothing about, but that you're not living in?
Well, first, a lot of MPs don't live in their riding. But one thing that does happen is we are matched with communities that would support our history. I grew up in Saskatchewan. We still have a house in a small town in Saskatchewan. Many of my friends are rural business people. As I progress with this, I've had lots of conversations about how transitioning to green energy and green industries would affect rural small business. Full disclosure, Chilliwack wasn't the first riding I was talked to about running in. And the first one didn't feel like a good fit for me. I didn't know the industry there. I do know the industry here. Additionally, the issues that we are facing are global issues. We're looking at dealing with climate change. We're looking at taking care of our seniors, providing families with childcare and reasonable solutions to affordability. These cover Canadians from border to border. And, you know, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm the primary.
Your time's up.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, and the final question is for Rob Bogdanovic. I just read your pamphlet, and it looks like there are tax cuts and extra spending. How does your party plan to do both of those?
I don't think we have a lot of extra spending in our pamphlet, so I'm not entirely sure what the person who wrote this question is actually referring to. We want to shrink the size of the federal government. We want to do things more efficiently within that government. We, of course, want to cut down on the regulations and reduce the bureaucracies. We want to transfer tax points to the provinces. And then, for instance, we do want to get rid of the GST, but that's only because we are planning on letting the provinces raise their PSTs or implement other taxes with those tax points so that they can directly control health care without any direct interference from the federal government. We want to put forth things like a capital gains tax cut. We want to get rid of the capital gains, but that's a $3 billion cost, and it actually generates incredible economic benefits. So within the budget, we look at where we can save. We want to put a lot of corporate subsidies, direct and indirect, on the chopping block. That's about $16 billion where cuts can be found. And we want to reform the immigration system so that it works better for Canada and that it will actually reduce the pressure being put on the urban realms of Toronto and Vancouver in terms of housing. And if we design that well, we could save $15 to $20 billion. So I think our budget is actually the one that will balance, because we actually are putting common sense solutions into play.
Thank you. So before I get to the next round of individual questions, I know there's been some people that have been coming online on board watching our channel. And the numbers have been increasing as well, and I know a few people came in as well. If you have not yet engaged with Slido, make sure you do so. Slido.com, that's our event code, Federal Debate, CHWK. Enter that, and you get your chance to vote. We may have time for an extra round, just because we saved some time at the beginning, to ask some more general questions, or to let a candidate answer a question they may want to answer. So please engage, and we'll do one more round of specific questions to individual candidates, and then we'll have a chance for a candidate to answer a question they may not have been able to answer yet. So, for the random generation, who do we have first? We have Kelly Valonis. Here's your question. In 2016, the Liberals promised a lot of new money for infrastructure upgrades and initiatives over the next 10 years, and are again promising more. Can you tell us how Chilliwack Hope has benefited in the past 4 years, and of any future initiatives you will be advocating for this area?
Okay, I do believe this was the first question you asked me, but I can do it again if you'd like. Did you want me to go again?
I asked you this question earlier.
Yes, you have.
I don't think it was that one. I think it was what can you,
Okay,
what's
sorry.
the, I think it
Okay,
was about
my
the
mistake.
promises. The other question was about the promises.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, the federal government that money is allocated for the highway, for the 4 lanes, at least up until Abbotsford. So now it sits in the provincial pockets. And so it sits to make sure that us, whoever, hopefully me as your MP, works with the MLA and make sure that that highway goes through. Other investments that we've made in infrastructure so far is we've put into over 864 new highways across Canada. We've put into bridges, we've put into roads, we've put into the bridge here. That's a big thing that we've done. And I think Chilliwack Hope has really benefited when it comes to housing. I know I keep circling back to that, but the Ruth and Naomi's is a big deal for us. That apartment building on Webb Avenue, that's another big deal for us. It's just another show of where when we work together and we bring our money into the community that needs it, people are getting the money they need.
Thank you. And our next question is for Heather McQuillan, and your question is, how do you see traditional NDP values and the current platform being a great fit for Chilliwack citizens, especially as we have become more diverse?
That's a great question. Ultimately, our entire platform is about making sure that people can have access to healthcare, access to childcare, family supports. And I think Chilliwack is really growing, and we're seeing a really diverse group of people come here. And as we see seniors in the community, we see new families, and that is really our entire platform. Additionally, it is a great location to transition into green energy, and we really hope to bring a lot of new business here in those sectors, making it easier for people who live here to find work within the community rather than always having to drive out or work elsewhere. So those are all really big issues for us. I know I said it before, but we are not a supporter of the pipeline. And I think you guys are at a really critical point, specifically here. You have a pipeline going through your schoolyards. And, that's something that you should really take into consideration, because the risk isn't worth the reward when you talk about other options. You can just as easily fill that with green energy.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Art Green. And your question is, the Liberals imposed a carbon tax on all Canadians, yet refused to charge countries like China a carbon tax on coal. What is your party's position on this?
We would definitely quit exporting coal. We would, it's probably the dirtiest fuel there is. Our position on coal is just totally negative, so that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. So next up we have Rob Boganovic. And the question for you is, what steps would your party take to strengthen property rights in Canada?
Well, the property rights that we have should be protected because we basically operate in the classical liberal model that John Locke put forth, and property rights were front and center. Basically, he believed in life, liberty, and property. That's what he put forth. We have to make sure that we protect that, because when we don't have control of our property, basically all the things that are essential to our lives can be taken. And that's why we want to make sure that we operate within a free market, free enterprise system. We want to make sure that the rights of Canadians to their property, the rights of Canadians to their intellectual property, their rights to their physical property is safeguarded. You have to increase the funding of the RCMP to protect people. You also need to make sure that you strengthen the laws so that if individuals are trying to seize property by government, then the Constitution steps in and prevents that. Now, that's not easy because right now we have a lot of courts and we don't know how they're going to rule on legislation. We got to bring these things forward and make sure that these things are understood by Canadians. Property is one of the essentials of our system.
Thank you. So next up is Mark Strahl. So the next question is, homelessness, I know we've talked about this question earlier, but it's got a different tilt to it. Homelessness, crime, addiction, and poverty are destroying our community and our downtown business. What have you specifically done to turn this around? You have been the MP for 8 years and the situation is getting worse. Why should you be given a second chance?
Well, thank you. And I think it is similar to the first question. I have thrown myself into the community groups that are tackling these issues, the Healthier Communities Group, the Homelessness Task Force, and I think I've tried to raise awareness around the issues of mental health, which I think are part of all of homelessness, crime, addiction, and poverty. All have that in common. Mental health issues impact people who are homeless, who turn to a life of crime, who are addicted. I think we need to do more to tackle mental health, bring awareness to it, reduce stigma around it, and I've done that with roundtables on mental health, attending important events, both here and in Ottawa, to fight to bring awareness around mental health issues. I've worked with people to change the homelessness partnership strategy funding to ensure that communities like Chilliwack, which were previously unable to get that funding, were able to get that funding. I fought for that change. We were able to fund things like the housing hub in Chilliwack because of that change. So I'll continue to work with whoever wants to work with me to make this community better with all levels of government. That's my commitment. That's what I've been doing, and that's what I'll continue to do if I'm re-elected as your member of parliament.
Thank you. So, and the final question in this round goes to Dorothy Jean O'Donnell. And the question we have for you is, hypothetically speaking, if you were elected to represent Chilliwack Hope, how would you stand out and best represent the folks of Chilliwack Hope?
Basically, there needs to be democratic renewal at a fundamental level. This cartel party system in which a handful choose who the candidates are, choose what the program is, and the MP, when they go to Ottawa, are responsible to those, the party whip, and not the people of Chilliwack Hope. What we propose is that the selection of candidates should be taken out of the hands of the political parties. Instead, the people of the constituency would work out the program that they think should be upheld and put forward to Ottawa. And then whoever is the best champion of that program can put themselves forward to be an MP. So the selection process is crucial. So until there is a fundamental change in the selection process, I don't expect I'll be elected as an MP. The selection of the candidates needs to be in the hands of the people, and basically should be run on a nonpartisan basis through Elections Canada.
Thank you. So because we've saved some time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a choice. We're going to add one more round and give you a choice of the next question. So we've removed the questions that have already been asked. So if you want to engage again with your technology and vote up the questions that you have not voted on yet, because the next questions I'm going to ask two more questions of the candidates and randomly select people to choose those. Those are the questions you want asked now. And then after that, we'll ask the candidates to answer a question of their choice. So I'm going to go to the general panel questions. And you voted up 2 questions fairly high there, and we have randomly generated. So as I do this question is still getting votes, so here it is. And as I do this, the second question I'm going to ask still is up in the air because there's a few that were vying for second place. So first of all, Heather McQuillan, what are your plans to safeguard the religious freedoms of Canadians of faith and freedom of speech for all?
You know, I was hoping to avoid this. I'm a Christian, and I believe personally that means my job is to defend those that are oppressed. It's a big part of why I'm running. And I know that there's a certain connotation that comes with Christian voting. our party and myself, we stand for a women's right to choose, and we stand with LGBTQA+, I'm going to try and get all of them, rights. We obviously, we are supporting a leader who practices his right to practice religion. It's different from mine, and as a whole, you can very openly see that the party supports our right to practice religion, and that's something we stand for in our in all Canadians. And I think that's very important, and that's something you can see throughout the party. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Valonis.
Well, it's under the Canadian Charter of Human Rights to protect our right to have a religious affiliation. And so that goes without saying that we uphold that. It's also protection of freedom of expression. That is one of our fundamental freedoms as Canadians. Now, there is some gray area in that, and there should be some gray area in that, because that comes with Section 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There is absolutely no room for hate speech, for obscenity, or for discrimination in any way. Thank you. So, we are Canadians, and we absolutely have a right to believe what we believe, and to worship who we worship, and to love who we love. We do not have a right to ever make anyone else feel like they are wrong, they are less of a human, or they are less of a person because of their choice. That is what I am proud about being Canadian, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of this community. Lately, I've seen with the Rainbow Crosswalk, how our school has embraced this, and how we have still a lot of work to do within our community to make sure that we are embracing everyone. Thank you.
And the final person for this question is Rob Boganovic.
Yeah, well, this issue is actually fundamental to so much of what my campaign is about. I really became concerned about what was happening when I saw what occurred in this community in recent events. We had Barry Neufeld. He stood up and he spoke against a program that he saw problems with, SOGI 123. He spoke out against the policies of SOGI 123. And, you know, the language was rough, but the reaction of the community was shocking. Basically, what happened was our own union, my union, the BCTF, decided to attack him. They hit him with a slap suit called a human rights case, and basically are trying to bankrupt him and silence him. All of this goes against the members' guide of the BCTF, which called freedom of expression, freedom of speech, essential to democracy. We're losing our democracy. I think that, Kelly, I don't think you and me have the same interpretation of the Charter, because you basically are seeing things in there that are not written. Hate speech is not defined. We are not allowed to do calls to violence, but hate speech is not something that's defined, and we've never banned obscenities, so I'm not sure which charter you're reading. We need to make sure
let's give Rob a chance
that
to
people
answer.
are protected. And one of the things I would like to see is either a dramatic reform or repeal of the Human Rights Code, because right now it's eroding our freedoms.
Thank you. So for our next question, and that will be our last specific question directed at the candidates, and then they will have a chance to speak to a question they have not yet spoken to. What is your plan to ensure Canada's debt burden remains low and affordable today and for future generations? And first we have Dorothy Jean O'Donnell.
Well, first of all, we think that individual income tax should be abolished. That is, the taxation should occur at the point of production. That is, where things are produced, then which share goes to the workers who produce it, the employers who own it, and the government for the necessary social and other programs. That is a fundamental change in tax policy. We think that immediately there should be a moratorium on all these so-called debts, and at least a commission of inquiry to look into who took out those debts and who profited from the many, many make-the-rich schemes that governments across the board have carried out. So, not immediately a cancellation of the debt, but immediately a moratorium on payments on the debt and a serious inquiry into the massive corruption that exists in the debt-making industry. We stand for social revolution. That social revolution begins in the hearts and minds of the people who decide that they're going to take control of their own lives, that decisions are not going to be made for them, but they will make their decisions themselves.
Thank you. And next up is Mark Strahl.
Yeah, I think the first thing that needs to be done if you want to get out of the problem of debt is you need to stop digging. And I think the problem was in the last election, Justin Trudeau promised Canadians, he looked them in the eye and he said, I'm being honest with Canadians like I always am, we will balance the budget by 2019. He's absolutely failed to keep that promise. It is now a $20 billion deficit that they're running, and there is no plan to balance it in the future. We have asked in the House of Commons dozens or hundreds of times, when will the budget be balanced? And there is now no answer. When I ran in the last election, Justin Trudeau promised my 11-year-old son that the budget would be balanced by the time he turned 15. Now, according to Finance Canada documents, he will be in his 40s before the budget is balanced if the Liberals get to continue to manage the country's finances. So we need to get back to a balanced budget. We need to do that in a responsible way, which our party has promised to do. In 5 years, we will retire Justin Trudeau's deficits and keep our promises to do it.
Thank you. And Art Green.
Well, the simple answer is to quit spending money you don't have. As it stands now, we're paying billions of dollars every year just to service our debt. Canada's structural deficit is closing in on $1 trillion. 75% of this debt has been created by previous Conservative governments. So I think it's a little bit rich of Mark Strahl to be complaining about Justin Trudeau running deficits. Justin Trudeau as well likes to borrow and spend willy-nilly, but to the middle class citizens, like at the expense of working poor, instead of investing in its citizens, like veterans, for example. Both these governments would rather invest in power and control at any expense, regardless of the outcome. Just look at climate change. Justin Trudeau invested $4.5 billion into a pipeline to help kill human species faster, just to appeal to the Alberta voter base, rather than invest in clean and renewable energy systems that would eventually create the greatest economic catalyst that the world would ever see. So all I could say is, like, go figure.
Thank you. So what we're going to do now is, you've been taking copious notes, as I see, and we're going to give you each a chance. We'll randomly select your name again. We're going to give you each a chance to speak to a question you may not have answered yet, and that might be close to your heart, and I understand that when issues get close to our heart, they're passionate issues, so let's make sure we stay respectful and we stay focused on the issue at hand and the question that's been asked. So we'll randomly generate the question, and first of all off is Dorothy Jean O'Donnell. So if you have a question that has been asked that you had not been able to answer, you have 1.5 minutes to do so.
Well, I would like to speak about the need for an anti-war government. The vast majority of Canadians are against war, and yet there's not a single representative of that voice in the House of Commons. There is not an anti-war MP. We need that. We need that voice. An example that people may know about was George Galloway, who for 30 years was in the British House of Commons and took a consistent anti-war stand. Canada is deep in the big muddy with the United States in its aggressions across the world, whether it's the Ukraine or Yemen or Syria. The threat, first of all, the wars that are going on, and there are many, but the threat of a big war is very real. And, you know, although Canada has a reputation, or did have a reputation as a peacemaker, that reputation, even internationally, has been greatly eroded. Canada needs to be a factor for peace in the world, something that can be a reliable friend and ally of all peoples everywhere, to get out of NATO and NORAD and these aggressive military alliances that drag Canada into wars over other people's countries. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Rob Boganovic. So that's not the question. The question is a question of your choice.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to hit the question that's on the debt that the previous ones just answered.
Oh, okay, so how to keep the debt burden low and low
Yeah.
burden on Canadians? Okay.
Yeah, because this is a big thing that I also care a lot about. We are doing a great disservice to the future, and we should be giving the future a fighting chance. And we can't do that if we financially strap them, because we don't know what the future holds. But we do know that debt is going to be a major problem for them. We are heading towards a fiscal cliff, and we got to bring it under control. You can't be charitable with other people's money. A nation can't be charitable spending their kids' money. Going back to property rights, we are spending what isn't ours to spend. There should be no taxation without representation. We're not giving the future a voice in how we spend this. So what we need to do is show discipline, especially on all the fluff that's not in the core, such as Trudeau spent $4.5 billion in announcements last summer, $12 billion last month, mostly in ridings he seems to think he's trying to win. We need to bring some discipline into this. We had a situation where Trudeau approved $18 million to build a private airport for a private golf course because, you know, carbon's bad, so that totally makes sense. None of this makes sense. So we need to go through the books. We need to find the regs that will make a more efficient economy so we can grow the economy. We have to impose fiscal discipline. And the truth is, we haven't been doing a very good job of that, whether we've been liberal or conservative, for quite some time. Maybe it's time we try something new.
Thank you. And next up is Heather McQuillan.
All right, I would also like to address the question of keeping the debt ratio down. We have proposed a really aggressive plan to take care of people and a really aggressive plan to take care of our environment. And a lot of people are asking how we can do this. We announced just a couple days ago that on our first day in government, we will end fossil fuel subsidies. We take it very seriously that corporations have been handed bailouts while the average citizen hasn't seen any result from that. And that's going to stop with our government. We just don't have that money. We don't have money to be buying pipelines. We do have money to be building infrastructures to take care of people. And so we're going to take that money and focus it in on everyday citizens. We're also going to add we're going to tax the top 1%. We think that creating a stronger economy is important. And so we are going to do that. Yeah, I guess that is all I have to say on that. I've also been informed that we will not be taking limos or getting private
Time is
jets.
Thank you. So next up is Art Green.
Yes, I'd like to re-answer my first question on affordable housing. The Green Party will enhance the federal government's contribution to meeting the housing needs of Canadians through direct investments and changes to the tax policies and lending and granting programs, putting the government's focus where it's urgently needed. But first of all, we have to deal with the drug situation that we have. The Green Party is calling for drug possession to be decriminalized to deal with the opioid crisis. The Canadian Institute for Health Information reports between January 2016 and September 2018, over 10,000 Canadians died from apparent opioid-related overdose. Fentanyl contamination of street drugs means that, that many of the reported drugs are actually poisonings and not overdoses. Decriminalizing drug possession will ensure that people have safe access to a safe, screened supply and medical support they need to combat their addictions. A Green government will declare a national health emergency, increase supports for mental health and addiction, boost funding to community-based organizations to test drugs and support drug users, ensure that naloxone kits are widely available to treat overdoses, and will establish a suicide prevention strategy to address the growing anxieties of drug and alcohol addiction.
Thank you. Kelly Valonis.
Well, Rob, you know what? We do disagree about SOGI. In fact, I think most people in this community want to move forward with diversity and not back way before the Harper days. So the question that I would like to talk about is the homelessness, addiction, and crime.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I just don't feel I'm close enough here. Homelessness, crime, it's a multi-level, multifaceted problem, and it's a problem that's growing in Chilliwack and Hope. We had this discussion yesterday at the Chilliwack Healthy Communities, and it's interesting that I had our MP right here came to our Rotary Club, and he talked about safe injection sites, and he said that the message that he was getting from downtown businesses is they don't support it. So I decided to go out, and Mark, I might have talked to 15 different people, I guess, than you did downtown, and they do support it, because they don't want to be walking in front of their businesses every morning picking up needles and drug paraphernalia. This is something that I do myself at our seniors center every morning, so the seniors don't have to do this. Do we need to have it right downtown? That's not an answer that's not the question I have the answer to. What we need to do is bring the right people to the table at the local level, the provincial level, and our level, and make sure we're putting in place these systems that we need to get crime and drugs off the streets. And we need to stop dehumanizing our addicts. We need to treat them with respect. We need to provide homes for them. We need to continue on with these programs that make us proud to be Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark Stroll.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about what a Conservative government will do to make life more affordable for Canadians. We have been making a number of announcements throughout the beginning of this campaign. All of them have been audited by the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office. The majority of parties are putting their campaign platform commitments through the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office. The Liberal Party is not. We have said that we would remove the GST off of home heating bills and home energy costs, because heating your home in the winter in Canada is not a luxury. It shouldn't be treated as a luxury, so the GST should be exempted from that. We'll make maternity benefits tax-free. We'll provide a universal tax cut to all hardworking taxpayers, which will result in an $850 per year savings for an average family. We'll make transit passes more affordable by implementing the green tax credit for public transit. We'll implement a children's fitness tax credit and children's arts and learning tax credits, which were cut by the Trudeau government. We'll boost the Registered Education Savings Plan. We will cancel $1.5 billion in corporate welfare and redirect savings to Canadians, because we don't believe that the federal government should be in the business of giving $12 million to companies like Loblaws Superstore to buy new freezers and call it a climate plan. We will help homeowners pay for energy-saving renovations through the Green Homes tax credit, which could save a taxpayer up to $3,800 per year. And for our seniors, we'll increase the age credit by $1,000, which could result in savings of $300 per senior couple.
Thank you. So in closing for the official debate part of the evening, to now is give you 1 minute sorry, my mic keeps cutting out. I'm going to give you to tell us why we should vote. You know, any that you may have. And we're going to start alphabetically. Can you hear me? We're going to start alphabetically descending. So we'll start with Kelly and go down the table this way. And you get 1 minute to tell us any close representing us in Ottawa.
Okay. Well, again, I'm not a career politician. I'm not an expert in politics, but I am an expert in leadership, and I'm an expert in bringing the right people to the table to get a job done. Working in nonprofit, I'm an expert in fiscal responsibility and attaining measurable results. We have had an expert politician for the past 26 years. 26 years with the same party. Is this the best representation for Chilliwack and Hope? Is this the best that we can do? I want to put my experience to work for the citizens in Chilliwack and Hope. I open the paper each week, and I see people bickering, and I see what's not getting done. We need to I want to work for you, bring the left, the right, and everyone in the middle, and work together. Now, I know that sounds bold, but I think it's time that we stop the division and work together on the real issues that matter to people that live in Chilliwack Hope. I'm an MP that will work for you. I've been in the trenches and I've worked on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Strahl.
Tonight's debate was meant to focus on vital small businesses, and so I want to focus on that in my closing remarks. After calling small business owners wealthy tax cheats in the last election, Justin Trudeau launched an all-out assault on them 2 years ago, threatening to raise taxes on their business investments by 73%. He also insulted spousal business partners by forcing them to prove that they were meaningful contributors to the business or face a massive new tax bill. Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives have just announced that we will repeal Justin Trudeau's small business tax increases, make spousal dividends tax exempt, appoint an expert panel to undertake a comprehensive review of the tax system, and cut red tape for our small businesses, because we understand that we must support, not attack, the small business sector, which is critical to growing Canada's economy to ensure that we can all get ahead.
Thank you. And Dorothy Jean.
Yeah, I represent the Marxist-Leninists. It's one of the small parties in Canada, and there are many of them. I suggest that as a citizen, you should look into the outlook and views of all the small parties and consider empowering yourself by giving your vote to the candidates or parties whose views most resemble your own. We have a website, MLPC. We have a renewal update, which is has come out like 18 times during this election to give you up-to-date news and analysis about what is going on. I have no illusions I'm going to be elected. I think the best we could hope for is to have the Conservatives defeated in this riding, but
let's give her her minute to finish.
So
I'll give you a
that's
few
it.
extra. Okay, thank you. Let's be respectful of them as they're trying to speak. And next up, we have Heather.
All right. Let's see if I can get it under time. You know, I think Mark and Kelly have done a great job of explaining why you should not vote for them again. The left and the right don't work. It hasn't been working for a long time. Our plan supports families, it supports seniors, it supports everyday Canadian citizens. I'm a mother, and I care about the planet that I leave to my son. And I'm a primary caregiver for my mother, who has Parkinson's, and I care that seniors age with dignity. I am personally invested in making sure our country steps up and does what's right for its citizens. And that's why I think you should vote for us.
Thank you. And Art Green.
Yeah, so we're in the midst of a climate crisis. If we cannot curtail our carbon output, we're facing imminent runaway global warming. Top scientists from 190 nations around the world are telling us we must transfer from a carbon economy very soon. It's imperative that we keep the average global temperatures from not rising past 1.5 degrees. If we fail this measure, we are facing a catastrophe like the world has never witnessed. Incremental changes are no longer viable. We need drastic changes in a very limited time. The good news is we still have time. If we make the right measures, not only can we save ourselves, but we can create the greatest economic catalyst that the world will ever see. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rob Bogdanovic.
Chilliwack Progress today says, we know who's going to win. Here in Chilliwack Hope, we know Mark Strahl is going to be the next member of Parliament. Now, what they are saying is that we are irrelevant, and that you being here is irrelevant. It is an insult to our democracy, and it's presumptuous to the extreme, but the media is not alone in this arrogance. Mark, you told some of my students that I had no chance 2 months ago, before the writ had even dropped. Kelly, you said that the Greens have a better plan on climate change, but that the election is between you and Mark. Now, you revealed, Kelly, yesterday that you had never bothered to read the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. Now you've revealed that you've never bothered to read the Art Foundation SOGI 123 policies.
You got 14 seconds to tell us why we should vote for you.
And
Please do.
only one poll matters. I'm asking you to vote your values, and October 21st will be a very interesting day.
Thank you. So before we go, and before I just have some closing remarks, I'm going to give you another poll. Okay, so so take out your phone, your iPad, whatever you're using here, and that also goes watching from home or wherever you are. I'm going to give you a poll, and the question is going to read whether you have changed your mind in terms of, if you didn't know who you're going to vote for but now do, then you've changed your mind, or you've changed your intentions, and the next, or if you've changed the candidate that you would hopefully like to vote for, or if you have not changed your mind based on tonight's vote. So here's the poll, or tonight's debate. Here's the poll. And the question is, leaving tonight's debate, I have changed my voting intentions. So yes, I've either chosen a different candidate, or I now know who I'm going to vote for. And so 7 people have said no, but there we go, we got more people. And then also we have no, there's no change. Okay, so I'll just give you, to get back on your technology, I know you haven't been using it for a little bit. So we already have over 70 people that are tuning in there. So it looks like so last time we had about 68% who said that they already knew who they were going to vote for. Now we have 30% of the people saying that, yes, I now have basically changed my mind. I'm going to vote for someone differently, or I now know who I'm going to vote for if I didn't know previously. And 72% of us said, no, there's no change. So that's an indication that these debates do matter, because you have spoken to 30% of the individuals, and either they didn't know who to vote for and now they have a pretty good indication, or they have decided to throw their support behind a different platform. So that's 99. Let's get over 100. We just need one more vote. I like 100.
Wait for it.
Pull out your second. There you go. Alrighty, so it's about the same number of participants. So there's the poll for that. Thank you very much. So I'll just shut that down. So before we go tonight, the first thing I want to do is I really want to thank our candidates. We should probably think of one thing. They didn't only come up here for 2 hours of their time tonight and give it to us as servants, as our voice in Ottawa, as our potential voice in Ottawa, but they're basically coming up here and saying, we're willing to give up our next 4 years of traveling and doing, speaking and, basically probably putting a lot of their other very important things to the side and speaking for us in Ottawa and speaking back to us as well and being our voice in Ottawa. So I want to thank you very much for that commitment, that dedication. Thank you. And then next of all, I want to thank you for asking some sharp questions and making sure that not only have we informed the candidates of the issues that are front and center in Chilliwack Hope, but also you have given them a chance to give their opinion on and their platform on what we should do about the issues that are affecting Chilliwack Hope. So give yourselves a round of applause, and thank you for coming out. Thank you for watching from home or wherever you are as well. And just so you know, the debate will be recorded, and just like at the municipal debate, we had about 1,000 people tuning in, and then the video was watched over 10,000 times in the week that followed. So that information is out there, and it can still keep you getting informed. So just a few more thanks before I go. I want to thank our sponsors. So the Downtown Chilliwack Business Improvement Association, Kyle, our executive director there, and Nicole is here. So thank you very much for co-hosting this event. Let's give them a round of applause. The Chilliwack Progress as our media sponsor, thank you very much. And also, I want to thank the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce, Leanna Kemp and Sarah up here, and our staff. We have Carlene, and I know Taylor is not here, but thank you for everything you did to put this event together. Thank you very much. And also my fellow directors on the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce for your volunteer service that you dedicate to making this a thriving community and making it easier to do good business in Chilliwack. So thank you. So that's all I have, and thank you very much for engaging in our future and ensuring we are going to have the best voice we can in Ottawa. Thank you. Have a good night.